God. I need somebody out here.
What's going on?
Oh, God.
There's 4 people.
In my mama's house.
Who are these people that are in the house?
It's my mom and my grandpa and my granny and my stepdad.
Amy Villard, a daughter and mother, walked across the dew-covered lawn, expecting to exchange morning greetings. Instead, she stepped into a scene so gruesome, so unthinkable, that even seasoned detectives would later call it one of the most brutal crime scenes they had ever witnessed.
Hey, are you Ross? I'm Tyler Duncan. I'm with Anderson County Sheriff's Office. This is Steve.
How you doing? How's it going?
I got assigned the case about the homicide that happened in Pendleton in 2015.
Okay.
Is Amy here?
She here.
So since she's the one that called 911, I think you were there also. We'd like to talk to you. If you want to come on out, we'll talk to you and then we can talk to her.
What had happened inside that trailer? Who could unleash such carnage on a family so close-knit, so seemingly ordinary? And why, despite all signs pointing to betrayal, would justice take nearly a decade to arrive?
I keep feeling like I should be waking up from a dream right now, and it's just not happening. So yeah, it's like a movie or something. It's not supposed to be real life.
Investigators now say they believe the 4 victims were murdered in this house sometime on Saturday. That's a day earlier than first thought, but family members say that just doesn't add up.
I keep feeling like I should be waking up from a dream right now, and it's just not happening. So yeah, it's like a movie or something. It's not supposed to be real life. And I understand, there again, they've got a job to do, but sometimes as family members, we want answers. And we just want to know what's going on.
This is the story of secrets buried in blood, of greed wrapped in family ties, and of a Halloween night that became a lasting nightmare. Pendleton, South Carolina, charming, historic, and deceptively peaceful. The Scott family had deep roots in this community. Mike and Kathy Scott, sweethearts since junior high, had spent their golden years caring for their aging mothers, Violet Taylor and Barbara Scott. Living together on a single plot in 2 modest trailers, they formed a rare 4-generation household, a rarity in modern times, and a testament to their devotion. But devotion, as it turns out, would be no shield, especially when fractured by bitterness, jealousy, and money. In the trailer just steps away lived their daughter, Amy Villard, her new husband, Ross, and Amy's 2 children.
Now, it all started here about 12:30 this afternoon. That's when deputies from Anderson County got a call about a possible shooting. When investigators went into the home, they found the victim. Discovery was made today by Kathy Scott's daughter. Now, deputies tell me at this point they don't know how or why this happened, only that they have a lot of investigating to do.
The family dynamic was strained. Tensions had grown in recent months, fed by personal feuds, financial strain, and a troubling rift between Amy and her parents. And while outwardly the Vallards ran a humble pet grooming business, behind closed doors things were beginning to unravel. This fragile family bond, once sewn tight by love, would soon be torn apart, leaving a trail of blood, mystery, and a community stunned to its core. It all began to unravel on the morning of November 2nd, 2015. Amy Villard, still in her pajamas, crossed the lawn that separated her home from her parents. The crisp autumn air was thick with silence, and something about it felt off. The dogs hadn't been out, the lights were off, and the usual bustle of morning activity inside the double-wide trailer was eerily absent. She unlocked the door and stepped into darkness. What met her eyes was carnage. Total, unfiltered carnage. 4 bodies, lifeless and bloodied. Her mother, Kathy, her stepfather, Mike, and the 2 grandmothers, Violet and Barbara. The home, once filled with laughter and family dinners, now resembled a war zone. Each victim had been stabbed, their throats viciously slashed, and in a twisted post-mortem display, each had been shot twice in the head.
I know myself and my brothers saw them right around the 6 o'clock time frame. Shortly after that,
I saw him go in the house about 8. The back door was unlocked when I came and discovered everyone.
Things that Amy has mentioned, jewelry-wise, that are
That
not on the
are
search
not
warrant.
on search warrant,
And they have not
here.
been found in the home yet.
Amy bolted back across the lawn in shock, screaming for Ross to keep the children inside. She called 911 in a frantic, tear-filled voice. The horror was real. But something else lurked beneath her panic, something that would only come to light years later. Police arrived swiftly. Pendleton, for all its quiet charm, was no stranger to the occasional crime. But this was different.
Well, it's just tragic and something that we don't see here in Anderson County very often. The last time we had 4 people killed involving homicide was in 2007, 2008.
A quadruple homicide in a rural town with little history of violent crime? The scene was unlike anything investigators had seen, and the clues, or lack thereof, made it worse. No broken windows, no forced entry, no obvious suspects. But one thing stood out immediately. The sheer brutality of the attack suggested personal rage. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was vengeance. Intimate, methodical, cruel. As the community reeled, the investigation began. Detectives combed through the scene, family members were interviewed, and suspicion, quiet and creeping, started to form. Amy and Ross, the couple just yards away, became central to the inquiry. Their finances didn't add up. Their stories changed. And then police made a discovery that turned suspicion into something far more serious. A large sum of cash, once believed lost in the attack, appeared in Amy and Ross's possession. Not just similar bills, exact serial number matches to money Mike Scott had shown in a photo before the murders. Still, it wasn't enough. Circumstantial evidence stacked up, but there was no smoking gun, no weapon, no witness, no confession. The case would grow cold, for now. But time, as investigators would learn, doesn't erase guilt. It merely waits until the truth, no matter how deeply buried, claws its way to the surface.
The type of person who's capable of doing something like this is a very dangerous person that we need off the streets. You know, the amount of hatred to stab somebody repeatedly, to slash them, it's not something that even a normal killer would do. It takes a monster to be able to do that.
Months turned to years. The headlines faded. The initial shock softened into quiet suspicion, and the Scott family's home, once filled with generations of life, stood as a grim monument to unresolved horror. But behind closed doors, the whispers never stopped. Amy and Ross, once seen as grieving survivors, were watched with careful eyes. Their behavior didn't sit right with the community or the detectives who never truly closed the file. They moved into a new home, remodeled the scene of the murders, even tried to sell it. They launched a new dog grooming venture, publicly played the role of devastated relatives, and posted heartfelt tributes online. Yet to those following the case closely, their tears felt off.
If you were talking directly to the person, do you want to look in the camera and just say exactly what you would say to that person?
I can't say that on TV. I'm just going to be honest, I can't say that on TV.
Their grief seemed too polished, too performative. And then there was the money. Investigators had noted inconsistencies from the start. How Amy and Ross, allegedly drowning in debt, were suddenly flush with cash.
The stuff you see on TV, that has nothing, that you can't compare that. You can't compare that.
A week after a quadruple murder, a family is still searching for answers.
We used to have family dinners right here.
For Amy Velarde,
it's just been a blur.
They say they never heard any gunshots or anything out of the ordinary from their house just around the corner.
Over $60,000 was found in their trailer shortly after the murders, matching the exact amount Mike had reportedly stored at home. Serial numbers didn't lie. This was his money. So how did it end up in their possession? Amy said it was savings. Ross claimed it was military disability funds. But former employees from their pet grooming business told another story. Unpaid wages, overdue bills, repossessed vehicles.
Ross had made a joke and said, do you want me to It was a joke at the time.
Right.
Then later I was like, holy, I'm glad I didn't say yeah.
It's Amy, right? What was your job there?
A bather, and
Bather.
I was learning in the process of grooming.
When you worked for the shop, you said they were just getting started, so they weren't very successful yet.
They appeared that they were fine.
Okay.
But then I would hear arguments of them, and a lot of it was money related. When I started working for her, I seen Kathy and Mike at the grooming shop. I was in the back grooming, so I didn't hear everything that was going on, but it was something to do with money.
Okay.
Throughout working there, she'd always tell me about how she was treated growing up and all of that.
What kind of stuff would she say about how she was treated?
She told me that she was always a daddy's girl, and she said her dad he was working on a car and it crushed him, and he was placed in the hospital. And her mom decided to pull the plug. She always hated her mom for that.
The timeline of their financial struggles clashed violently with their supposed fortune. Still, no charges came, no arrests. The years dragged on, and the horror of that Halloween night threatened to be lost to memory. But justice, though slow, was never far. In 2023, nearly 8 years after the murders, a new detective took the case. With fresh eyes and relentless focus, they started again from scratch. And what they uncovered would reignite the fire beneath this long cold case. A shoe print, an Asics sneaker, the same kind Ross was seen wearing on security footage the night of the murders, was found inside the house. Not just anywhere, but stamped in blood, laid down after the victims had bled out. Ross denied owning the shoes, but the footage said otherwise. And the shoes, gone, never recovered. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to form.
Your grandmother, and then obviously Mr. Scott and his mom. What do you remember? What can you help us with? Where should we look?
Yeah, me and my therapist talk about that a lot. Obviously, you got to know finding people doesn't really leave you in the right state of mind. Can do things to you.
Yes, ma'am.
And then everything that ensued. I mean, honestly, I can barely remember the funerals.
Ross, tell us a little bit about like the relationship between, like, I guess y'all and the family. Something happened?
We got into it around 4th of July or something with Mike, but he wasn't a nice person at all. Because I told my mom, look, I don't like it. My kids can't come over there until we straighten some stuff out.
So at the time of the murders, you and your mom were back talking, everything was kind of getting patched up?
Me and my mother was not a horrible person. She was prickly.
She always hated her mom for that.
So can you tell us a little bit about that weekend when were you gone, when you got home and you found the bodies, or what happened?
His mom's, my mother-in-law, to do Halloween. We went down there, we spent the weekend.
What day did y'all leave to go down?
Friday night.
Friday night.
I drove myself quite crazy for about a couple of years there. And I've chosen to step away, and I've got to be healthy, and I've got kids, and I've got a life to live, and if somebody else dropped the ball on it, it's not on me anymore.
Okay. Well, if we just ask Ross a couple more things, and we'll be out of here. All right. You remember owning a red pair of shoes? A pair of shoes? Asics Speed Star shoes. Don't recall. And these Asics Speed Star shoes.
Yeah, I remember those shoes.
What happened to the shoes?
That's a good question, because I have no idea.
This is from crime scene photos, and these are confirmed to be Asics Speed Star shoes.
Okay.
Inside, and they have blood droplets on them. And interestingly enough, you're at the Quick Trip wearing those shoes the night of the murders.
Okay.
So if you never went in the house, I'm just interested to know how they ended up in the house.
I have no idea how those shoes would have had any kind of blood on them. I mean, obviously I was wearing them at a Quick Trip on the 31st.
Well, and they never found the clothes either that you were
wearing. That hoodie?
Mm-hmm.
Let's think here.
The fact that your shoes are inside of the house in blood, that's a big problem.
Again, I don't know where the shoes are at the moment, and I don't remember whatever happened to those particular shoes. If something were to have happened that I had done, it would be stupid for me to wear them into the house and then wear them after that. right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They were never found. So it's almost like he got rid of them.
A new theory emerged, one that connected the motive, the means, and the moment. Amy and Ross hadn't been victims. They were the architects of a family's destruction, and in December 2023, the arrest finally came. Handcuffed and charged, the couple who once lived just steps from the scene of one of the most brutal crimes in South Carolina history were now at the center of it. Amy Villard, daughter, mother, alleged mastermind. Ross Moore Villard, Marine veteran, husband, alleged executioner. After 8 long years, justice wasn't just knocking, it was breaking down the door. The arrest came swiftly, almost quietly. December 2023, 8 years after that nightmarish Halloween, Amy and Ross Villard were taken into custody at their Columbia home. No dramatic chase, no final act of defiance. Just 2 people who thought they had escaped the reach of justice, now facing its full force. They were charged with 4 counts of murder. Immediately, prosecutors moved to deny bond, citing not just the heinous nature of the crime, but the couple's financial means and the potential flight risk. Twice they applied, twice they were denied, and for the first time, the public heard it plainly. The state believed Amy Villard was the mastermind, a woman who had everything to gain: her mother's inheritance, control over the estate, and access to tens of thousands in unbanked cash. She'd allegedly used her proximity, her trust, and her role as daughter and caregiver to orchestrate the unthinkable. Ross, trained by the military and capable of carrying out violence with precision, was believed to be her weapon. The timeline, once muddled by years of speculation, now sharpened. Amy lured her parents and grandmothers into calm. She texted Ross at 8:30 p.m. on Halloween night, "10 more minutes, LOL, everyone is up now and talking." It seemed innocent, but to detectives, it was the countdown. Ross entered the home, attacked first. No forced entry, no struggle from Mike. A swift, targeted assault, 6 stab wounds to the neck. The others tried to run. Amy perhaps blocked the way, perhaps even participated. Kathy, Amy's own mother, tried to reach for her revolver. It was found near her body, empty. The final blows were not just brutal, they were methodical. The state believed Amy cleaned the scene, hid the weapons, staged a discovery, then waited over a day to call for help. By the time police arrived, the trail was cold. Evidence buried, but it wasn't over. In February 2024, just 2 months after her arrest, 2 sharpened shanks were found in Amy's jail cell. When confronted, she reportedly said, "I'm getting out of here one way or another." Whether it was a threat to others or to herself, no one knew. But it rattled everyone. Amy's lawyers pushed back. They claimed the weapons weren't hers, that the state's case was built on theories, not facts.
I would like to address the shank or whatever the weapon that was found in the cell, first of all. I've talked to my client, I've gotten her side of this. She was in a cell with 2 other people. There were 4 bunk beds in there. Ms. Velarde kept her belongings on top of a bunk bed that wasn't in use. This shank, knife, whatever it was found in a drawer. They said it was her drawer, but none of her belongings were in that drawer. I don't know how people knew when the bond hearing was, because I didn't even tell Amy when the bond hearing was. I talked to her last Friday. She did not know when the bond hearing was. I could also point out that she was moved, I think, last Thursday. Thursday? Yes. So she was moved last Thursday from one cell to another cell. And if she had a shank with her, she had to obtain it in that very short amount of time, or she had to transport it with her from one cell to another, without a bag, without any, with her clothes and belongings all in her hands. This is not a small weapon. I've seen a picture Ms. Weiss provided. It's not a small weapon. It would be hard to hide this. And I would also venture to say, with the comment that is in the report, if she said, "I'm getting out of here one way or the other," if she did say that, that doesn't imply that she's a danger to other people. It implies she's a danger to herself.
That Amy and Ross had 8 years to flee if they were guilty, and never did. But prosecutors had something more powerful than an escape attempt. They had a story built on motive, opportunity, inconsistencies, and chilling circumstantial evidence. A story of betrayal, of greed, of a daughter who stood to gain everything from the deaths of those who raised her. And now the world waits for a jury to decide if that story ends in conviction, or if the ghosts of Halloween night will continue to haunt Pendleton unresolved. The upcoming trial promises to be one of the most anticipated in South Carolina's recent history, not only because of the crime's brutality, but because of its layered complexity. A murder that destroyed an entire household. A case built without direct witnesses, missing weapons, and only circumstantial evidence connecting two of the most unlikely suspects, a daughter and her husband. In the public eye, opinions are split. Some see Amy as a cold, calculated manipulator who used her proximity and trust to orchestrate the perfect crime. Others still hold out hope that this is all a tragic misunderstanding, that the real killer is still out there, and that Amy and Ross are simply victims of a broken investigative system. But the details are hard to ignore. The exact matching serial numbers on the cash, the missing weapons, the A6 sneakers seen in the murder house, later worn by Ross on the night of the crime, then mysteriously vanished. The long-standing tensions, the history of resentment, and Amy's shifting stories over time. And then there's the most damning thread of all, the timing. In the weeks before the murders, Amy and Ross were spiraling. Their business was failing. Their car was being repossessed. They were drowning in debt. But within days of the murders, they had cash. Lots of it. Enough to silence their debts, start over, and pretend it was life savings from the military. It wasn't. It was blood money. And in December 2023, the justice system finally caught up. Still, the prosecution faces challenges. There is no DNA, no confession, no murder weapon. What they do have is a case built on a mountain of motives and inconsistencies, on the psychology of grief performed too well, and on the shadows of two elderly women who never had a chance to fight back. As the trial date approaches, one question echoes louder than all the rest. Can justice still be served nearly a decade after the crime? Or will Amy and Ross, bound by blood and marriage, slip through the cracks one more time? For now, the town of Pendleton waits, the families grieve, and the victims, Kathy, Mike, Violet, and Barbara, remain frozen in time, their story held in the silence between screams, awaiting a verdict. And when that day comes, the truth, whatever it may be, will finally speak. What began as a quiet Halloween evening ended in unspeakable tragedy. And what followed was nearly a decade of questions. Some whispered, others shouted, by a family shattered, a community haunted, and detectives who refused to let the case die. The trial will not just determine the fate of Amy and Ross Ballard. It will decide whether trust can be shattered beyond repair, whether a daughter could really orchestrate the murder of her own mother, her stepfather, and two fragile grandmothers, whether greed can override the deepest of bonds, family. The prosecutors have laid their cards on the table. This was no random act of violence. It was intimate, strategic, devastating. They believe Amy used her voice to lull her family into a false sense of safety, while Ross used his training to carry out a swift and merciless massacre. Together, they planned the attack. Together, they watched the family die. But the defense will argue otherwise. That suspicion is not proof. That a family's dysfunction doesn't equate to murder. That anyone under the microscope of a cold case for long enough can begin to look guilty. In the end, it will come down to 12 strangers, jurors who must decide whether the shadows cast by money, motive, and memory are enough to convict. And as they deliberate, they'll weigh not just evidence, but the weight of legacy. 4 lives extinguished, countless others changed forever. And so the tale of Pendleton's most horrifying night closes, for now, with a community still grappling with the unthinkable, and a family left in ruins. What justice looks like in the end? Well, that's for the court to decide. Until then, the silence on Refuge Road remains. As the gavel prepares to fall, the air around Pendleton thickens with anticipation. The faces of Kathy, Mike, Violet, and Barbara linger not just in photo frames and memory, but in every courtroom moment. Their lives, their love, and their final terrifying hours cry out for justice. One last time. Whatever the verdict, this story will remain etched into the heart of South Carolina. A chilling reminder that sometimes the darkest monsters don't wear masks. They sit at the family table, and when the trial ends, whether it brings closure or more questions, one truth will endure. Not all ghosts haunt from beyond the grave. Some live next door. If you found this story compelling, heartbreaking, or eye-opening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime breakdowns just like this. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a case. Stay curious, stay safe, and take care of each other. See you in the next one.